Alright, what's good YouTube? Sean Cameron. Today we got the SpongeBob conspiracy theory number 3, the Mrs. Puff theory. You know what I'm saying? Now look, I know a lot about Mrs. Puff. Obviously, she's SpongeBob's instructor and all that, trying to help him pass. Man can never do it. It's been like what, almost a decade at this point. Like, bro, SpongeBob, tee up, honestly. But you know what I'm saying? If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and let's hop right into this video, man. Mrs. Puff passed.
Mrs. Puff is a boarding school teacher in Bikini Bottom. She's passed all of her students except for one, SpongeBob SquarePants.
Ew.
He's taken her driver's test hundreds of times, and he always ends up failing it and causing destruction and chaos that usually ends up with Mrs. Puff going to jail, despite it not really being her fault. We also know that she was once married, but her husband was killed by fishermen.
That's my driving teacher, Mrs. Puff.
Mrs. Puff? Oh, she's married.
Oh no, Mr. Krabs, she's single.
Then what happened to Mr. Puff?
Crazy.
She doesn't like to talk about it.
Throughout the show, there are moments like this that seem to be hinting at her having a dark, mysterious past. And in Season 2, Episode 10, No Free Ride, we get the biggest clue about who Mrs. Puff really is. After SpongeBob fails the driving test yet again, Mrs. Puff has just had it with him and ends up just giving up and giving him his license even though he never really passed. She quickly realizes that this is a horrible idea and he'll probably end up destroying the entire town.
Yeah. Pretty much, yeah. Accurate. Yep. Accurate. Yep. All of them gone.
Much destruction. This reporter asks, why? Local consensus places the blame on this negligent, selfish driving instructor.
Remember this clip, because it's going to be very important later on. And then she says this insanely revealing line.
What have I done? Everyone will know that I let him slide through school. I'll have to move to a new city, start a new boating school with a new name.
No, not again.
No, not again.
What do you
Come
mean by
on,
that?
it's like they're just begging someone to make a theory about this. So we now know Mrs. Puff was originally from a different town, she used to own a different boating school, and Mrs. Puff isn't even her real name. There's something in her past that she ran away from. Now, there's been some debate over whether she's actually referring to a new name for herself or for her boating school, but I do think she's talking about her own name, because if she's trying to run away from something in her past, she wouldn't start a new boating school with her real name in the title. Now, when she says again, I don't think she's just referring to starting a new life.
Everyone will know that I let him slide through school.
Not again.
I think at her previous boating school, she had a terrible student just like SpongeBob who she prematurely gave a license to, and it led to something so terrible happening that she had to run away and start a whole new life. In Season 3, Episode 5, Doing Time, we get a flashback to when she first opened up the school.
Where did I go wrong? With the opening of my new boating school, I pledge that as long as a student is willing to learn, I shall never give up.
Hi, I'm SpongeBob SquarePants.
And it was that day, she was like, I hate it here. The day she met SpongeBob was the worst day.
The opening of this new boating school. Let's keep in mind that this is not her first boating school. Maybe the whole reason she's making this pledge now at her second school is because she gave up on a student at her previous school, and that led to her having to run away and start a new life. She's pledging to never make the same mistake again. Now let's skip ahead to one of the newer episodes. Season 12, Episode 21, Lighthouse Louie, where Mrs. Puff has SpongeBob organize all the stuff she keeps in the school's lighthouse. There's lots of interesting things hidden in the background, but the first thing that caught my eye was this file labeled Mrs. Puff. It makes sense for a teacher to have files on all their students, but why would she have a file about herself? But let's remember, she's not Mrs. Puff. That's a fake identity she created, and I'm willing to bet all of her fake identification documents are in this file. Back in No Free Rides, she just gives SpongeBob a license that she already had.
So she knows how to make licenses.
So she clearly makes these licenses and would probably know how to make fake identifications. But that's not the only hint about Mrs. Puff's past in this lighthouse.
Ew, you see
there
Mr.
is something
Krabs?
in here that directly
I saw
confirms
him.
all of this. As SpongeBob swallows all of Mrs. Puff's junk, we see something very interesting for only a few frames. Deranged boat teacher makes getaway.
Hold up.
Very interesting for only a few frames. Deranged boat teacher.
October 21st, new Kelp post. Deranged boat teacher makes getaway. Distracts authorities with balloon animals. New Kelp, as in New Kelp City? Hold up, bro.
makes
This is a whole
getaway.
nother
This man-
area.
that's a whole nother area.
Are still hiding stuff about Mrs. Puff fleeing her old life. It might not look like it at first, but we actually get a ton of new
same
information
picture?
from this
That's the
newspaper.
same picture as the commentator guy
Yeah.
on the news.
Kelp Post, which tells us Mrs. Puff originally lived in New
New
Kelp
Kelp
City.
City,
Then there's
exactly.
a caption that reads, distracts authorities with balloon animals. And do you remember that clip from the beginning?
I hope I still remember how to do this.
So whenever Mrs. Puff makes a getaway or commits a crime, she leaves behind a balloon animal to distract the police.
them.
I'm telling you guys, these writers don't just do stuff randomly. They have reasons for everything. And the most damning piece of evidence from this newspaper is
Is the
actually
picture.
the picture of Mrs.
Yep.
Puff. Kind of a strange photo, right?
We
have
saw
seen
it.
this exact same photo of her before. In the episode No Free Rides, when she imagines what would happen if SpongeBob got his license.
Local consensus places the
Yep.
blame on this negligent, selfish
Same
driving
picture.
instructor.
This means that this isn't just her imagination of what might happen. This
It
is
actually
also
happened.
her remembering what happened when she lived in New Kelp City and prematurely gave one of her students a
Yup.
license. And I'm willing to bet that the fish reporting the news is the exact same one who reported about her in New Kelp City. Let me explain. We know from the
This
episode
dude got
Whatever
hair.
Happened to SpongeBob that reporter
He's so dude. He never has hair. Bruh, this might be the fish from New Kelp City, bruh. Oh,
This is
my
the news reporter when he
gosh.
was younger.
Exactly. This like back in the day.
her in New Kelp City. Let me explain. We know from the episode Whatever Happened to SpongeBob that reporters from the Bikini Bottom News can also work for the New Kelp City News. But
Yeah.
the real reason I think this is because of his hair. In the
Exactly.
entire show, we
He
have
has no
never
hair.
seen this fish reporter with hair before. Why would
Exactly.
the creators go out of their way to add that detail? Because Mrs. Puff isn't imagining him as he looks now.
It was
She's
in the
remembering
past.
him from years ago when he used to have
I
hair,
knew it.
when he reported about her in New Kelp City.
Yup.
Mrs. Puff has been running from her past ever since, and is now forced to relive her experience with an unteachable student through SpongeBob. But reliving this trauma has pushed her to the point of complete insanity. And
Yup.
trust me when I say
She's
that you
insane.
have no idea how delusional she actually is.
Bro, Mrs. Puff, like, when I was watching the show back then, bro, like, you didn't really see it, but, like, her insanity just kept growing more and more into, like, she finally had a break.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, I didn't see it back then, but as I grow up, I'm like, I just keep thinking about it. Mrs. Puff really went insane. And
Another
who wouldn't?
running gag throughout the
SpongeBob,
series.
he's just, stop. SpongeBob is just stop. Like,
Man, 35 still don't know how to drive.
right, bro, please learn.
Is Mrs. Puff's occasional nervous
Like,
breakdown.
he hasn't gotten nowhere at all. All he knows is how to put on a seatbelt and press gas and press brake. That's it.
Are moments of insanity
Jesus
because of
Christ,
SpongeBob.
what is that
and
nose
they get more
placement?
Actually, he
severe
doesn't even
as
know
the
how to
show
press brake,
continues.
does he?
At first, she did care for SpongeBob,
No.
but in the newer episodes, she literally tries to kill SpongeBob just to get him out of her life. Even SpongeBob just walking
I
up to
remember
her
that
gives
episode.
her severe PTSD.
Hi, Mrs.
It's so Liz PTSD. She said, SpongeBob, press the brake.
Even SpongeBob just walking up to her gives her severe
like, "Mrs. Puff."
PTSD.
It's not real.
Hi, Mrs. Puff.
Hit the brakes! SpongeBob! Watch the tree! Laugh!
Wait, Mrs. Puff.
Watch the tree.
Driving.
But these mostly seem like just one-off moments, and for the most part, Mrs. Puff is still a functioning member of society, right? I'm going to show
No.
you that she's actually much more insane and
My
delusional than you
gosh.
may think. And some of the episodes she's in take place entirely in her own head. If we're talking about
Wait,
how
what?
insane Mrs. Puff is, there is no better place to start than the episode Doing Time. Once again, SpongeBob fails the voting test and causes destruction and chaos.
was
which
this the
leads to
episode where it's like it kept looping back into that moment?
Yeah, it did kept looping.
Mrs. Puff going to jail. SpongeBob keeps breaking into jail to try and bust her out, but Mrs. Puff actually prefers being in jail over teaching him. We actually get another interesting line about Mrs. Puff's past in this episode.
Okay, you can do this, Puff. You can get through this without losing your sanity. Oh, that's a road we don't want to go down again.
So we know that Mrs. Puff has lost her sanity in the past, probably from her previous terrible
New
students.
Kelp
But it
City.
seems like she's recovered since then, except in this episode she has a complete mental breakdown. SpongeBob keeps appearing in impossible places until she gets thrown into
Wait.
solitary confinement, where each wall of the room transforms into a giant SpongeBob face. And then the episode ends in a way that's so weird and confusing that it rivals the infamous gorilla episode ending. As Mrs. Puff freaks out, she's suddenly transported back into the beginning of the episode when SpongeBob was taking the test. Except this time, SpongeBob gets arrested instead of her.
Help! Help! No!
A lot of cops.
No!
can't believe it. It was all a dream. I'm not going to jail.
Why would you go to jail? You already did your time.
And it still looped. So I was like, wait, what? Like, when is the loop gonna end? I'm like, I was confused back then. I'm like, bro, what is going on? Wait, hold up, wait.
Sad.
That's not the same. That's not the same
Except
outfit.
in this episode, she has a complete mental
an old
breakdown.
outfit.
SpongeBob
See, this one's orange, but in this one, see,
himself
Is
inside
that what she
of
wore
prison.
before?
It's Puff just caught in.
Probably.
So what's really going on?
see, that's not the same outfit.
Forget it.
So what's really going on in this episode? Was the ending all in her head? Is
Yeah.
Mrs. Puff just caught in an endless loop? I think this entire episode is inside of Mrs. Puff's head, and she's actually on the outside the whole time, but she's
Yep.
been imagining herself inside of prison. I can explain. Listen closely to what the police officer tells Mrs. Puff.
I'm not going to jail.
Why would
You already
go
did
to jail?
fine.
You already did your time.
Why would you go to jail? You already did your time. And then revealing she's still in a prison uniform despite being on the outside. So this scene is obviously inside of her head, which means everything we see is symbolic. And if we can understand the symbolism of it, we can understand what's really going on with Mrs. Puff. Notice how she's suddenly wearing a black and white striped prison uniform, even though the entire episode
Was
she's been wearing
orange.
this orange jumpsuit.
Yeah.
Why would the creators go to the extra effort to draw a whole new prison uniform for her? Well, we've seen her wear this black and white prison uniform before. The very first time she went to prison back in season 1, episode 7, Hall Monitor. So when
Oh,
the police
yeah.
officer says, "You've already done your time," he's referring to the first time she went to jail. But why is she still wearing that uniform outside of prison? Well, she may have gotten out of jail, but she was by no means free. Having to teach SpongeBob is a prison in itself, and she manifests that by believing she's in jail and wearing a prison uniform despite being on the outside. This entire episode, every time SpongeBob magically appears, is all inside of her head. She is completely delusional, and hints that she's experiencing these hallucinations don't stop there. Just 6 episodes later, she goes to a house party SpongeBob throws, and while everyone is talking and having a good time, in the background we see she's literally
Oh my
sitting by
gosh.
herself talking to an ice sculpture of SpongeBob. You can't tell me this isn't intentional.
Nah, that's
Look at
crazy.
This. Now back in the episode No Free Rides, there is a very
He's talking
strange
to a
picture inside
sculpture?
of Mrs. Puff's home.
This right here
Ew.
scared me back then. I thought it was so creepy. I remember seeing it for the first time. It was like a loop type of thing. And there was another one. She was like sitting on a couch, like after like a long day, just like very tired. And it was another picture on the wall just looped. Bro, back then that I was freaked out by that because that was so weird.
It's a picture of Mrs. Puff inside of
another
Of
picture.
Mrs. Puff inside of a picture
Yup.
of Mrs. Puff,
And it
creating
loops.
an infinite loop. This is something that has confused SpongeBob fans for years. But like everything in the show, there is a reason for it being there. One of the SpongeBob storyboard artists actually called it the biggest mystery in the entire show. If you think about it, this is just like the end of Doing Time, where she's
Oh,
stuck in
a
an infinite
loop.
loop of SpongeBob failing the driving test. Because it's all symbolic of what her life is, just an endless cycle of SpongeBob taking the test and failing. And no matter
over
what
and
she does
over.
to try and escape, she always ends up back in the same place at the end of the episode. So
Yep.
this picture is another symbolic manifestation of what she's feeling. We even see another one
Yep,
of these
this right
pictures
here.
all the way
This
in
right here.
season 9, episode 5, Bumper to Bumper. This is something that the show is consistently alluding to. Mrs. Puff is an unreliable narrator, and anything we see with her could potentially all be inside of her own head.
That
in
is
fact,
crazy.
I believe I found another episode that takes place inside of her head. In season 9, episode 17, SpongeBob Longpants.
SpongeBob Longpants.
I mean, I'm not gonna say I really knew, but in a way, you can kind of tell that it was inside of her head because SpongeBob kept breaking into the prison easily. Like he literally took a mask off. It's 2 of the police officers, him and Patrick. I'm like, what? Like, where the guards at?
Wait, hold on. He said SpongeBob long pants. I remember seeing that episode because it's like my favorite. She woke up at nighttime when it was like daytime.
Goes to a
let me
different
see.
boating instructor and actually gets his license. But as soon as he does, we briefly cut to Mrs. Puff waking up.
You pass.
I
Yeah,
finally
look,
got
it's
my
nighttime.
driver's license.
Lock your doors, bar your windows, it's the end of the world!
Now, this seems like it's probably just a throwaway gag where Mrs. Puff somehow senses that SpongeBob got his license and it causes her to wake up and freak out. You know, it's a good bit, it's funny, but I have a question. If the joke is that she's supposed to be waking up at the exact time SpongeBob gets his license, how come she wakes up at night when SpongeBob clearly gets his license during the day? Because this entire episode actually takes place
In her
inside of
head.
Mrs. Puff's head. And this is the only part of the episode in the real world.
And it's still nighttime.
I don't know what that was all about, but I'm glad it's over.
But let me pause for a second. I'm sure some of you are already wondering if this contradicts my previous SpongeBob video, The Television Theory. If you haven't watched that one, the gist of it is that the entire show is a documentary television show, and everything we see is actually being secretly filmed by scuba divers. And there's a ton of evidence to support it. I'm very proud of that video. You should definitely check it out. But if everything's supposed to be from a camera, then how are we seeing things from inside Mrs. Puff's head? In fact, how do we see dreams and flashbacks and thought bubbles? Well, I think the simple answer is that even though we view the show through an objective camera lens, the world itself still follows the rules of a cartoon.
You can never tell another living soul.
Wait, hold on!
What's that?
My pen is out of ink.
Plankton! You'll never get me formula, not even in a flashback.
In the world of SpongeBob, you can imagine something and other people can still see, record, or interact with it because that's just how cartoons work.
Even
Back to the
speech bubbles,
theory,
they can
we know
fight
that her
you.
insanity has caused her to live a life of delusion. But if you remember back to the Lighthouse episode, she's also become an extreme hoarder. And looking at her collection of junk is like a look directly into her mind. So there's gotta be something we can learn about her from it. There's a picture of her boyfriend, Mr. Krabs, the hall monitor belt she gives her students, the mean drawings her students make her, SpongeBob's diary, a boating safety helmet. Wait, SpongeBob's diary? Why does she have SpongeBob's diary? The last time we saw that, it was safely put away in SpongeBob's library. What's it doing in her lighthouse? And
What?
why does she have Squidward's painting? And a table from the Krusty Krab? And SpongeBob's bike? And
Hey,
Squidward's teddy
stop
bear?
along.
And the hair curlers Mr. Krabs had? And that statue of Squidward? And that diamond ring? And that crown?
He's
And
a
that bucket of
Spielberg.
radioactive waste? And that jellyfish sign? Oh my god. Mrs. Puff is a kleptomaniac. Mrs. Puff has been stealing from everyone in Bikini Bottom. I can even prove that her pet snail from season 3 episode 19 was
It's
stolen.
not hers.
My snail is up a tree.
Isn't that Squidward?
I've had her since
Yeah.
I was a little girl.
I remember the episode when he put her in the race.
You've had that snail since you've been a little girl, huh? Then how come that is the exact same snail Squidward had 4 episodes ago in the Great Snail Race?
I wouldn't
Yep.
let Snelly here play with that mongrel
She
mutt.
stole it.
She's a purebred. See, she even has her own...
Even has the certificate for her. So how'd you have her since she was 3 then, Mrs. Puff? Come on now, like, it doesn't make sense.
papers.
He
Okay.
even has her paperwork. Mrs. Puff clearly stole the snail from Squidward.
Yep.
But why the hell would Mrs. Puff steal all this other junk? What possible use could she have for any of it? We could find the answer to that question by looking at this green hat and this purple jacket. These were gifts Mr. Krabs bought her on their first date, but she ended up feeling uncomfortable receiving them and gave them back to him.
But you steal it back?
I just don't feel
Yeah.
comfortable accepting all these gifts.
But you feel
Except
comfortable stealing
apparently
them
she's
back.
not too uncomfortable to steal them back afterwards. So clearly Mrs. Puff
Exactly.
isn't stealing this stuff because she wants to use it. She just steals for the thrill of it. Maybe stealing things is her way of coping with the insanity of her everyday life. And remember, this isn't the first time she's gone insane.
You can get through this without losing your sanity. Oh, that's a road we don't want to go down again.
In fact, I have reason to believe that she started stealing things way back whenever she first went insane.
I hope I still remember how to do this.
I don't think she's just talking about remembering how to make balloon animals.
Remember
she's
how to
probably
steal.
also referring to remembering how to steal a boat.
Yep.
And if that's not enough for you, in a SpongeBob comic book, she actually admits that she used to rob
What is
banks, and
this?
she wears the exact same ski mask. Mrs. Puff lives a completely delusional and miserable life, all because she has to teach SpongeBob how to drive. It's led her to steal from the people she cares about and completely disassociate from reality. But that begs a very important question. If SpongeBob is causing her life to be so miserable, then why does she even keep teaching him? After all the destruction and pain he's caused, she'd totally be justified to expel
Right, bro,
him,
just quit.
right? I mean, she will literally try and kill him so she doesn't have to teach him, but for some reason she can't just expel him. It's almost like there's someone forcing her to teach SpongeBob.
The mastermind.
Back to the
This
episode
man
No
is
Free
on
Rides.
Mrs. Puff's
After
case.
prematurely giving SpongeBob a license, she steals his boatmobile so he can't hurt anyone. In the end, this causes
Get
her
off
to get
my case,
arrested and
yo.
go to jail, but then SpongeBob tells her this.
And besides, the warden says she'll let you go early if you do her a favor.
What's that?
Free driving lessons!
She'll get to leave prison early if she gives free driving lessons.
And why is that? Like I can't do like community service or. But no, I have to teach. Not only does she have to like teach like classes, she has to teach SpongeBob himself.
He trying to torture this woman.
They're trying to torture her, bro.
That seems like an oddly specific requirement.
Exactly.
And that's not the only time this gets mentioned either. In Season 9, Episode 5, Bumper to Bumper, we get this scene.
If only SpongeBob could pass his boating test, he'd be out of my life once and for all. Unfortunately, I keep getting reminded of the consequences if I get too angry with the little nuisance.
Consequences. Are you telling me that if she refuses to teach SpongeBob specifically, she'll be violating her parole and get sent back to jail? Why does the prison even care if Mrs. Puff teaches SpongeBob?
Exactly.
Is it just part of some weird community service?
No.
But things start to get really suspicious at the end of Season 7, Episode 5, Summer Job.
This junk
Once again,
feels
Mrs.
personal.
Puff ends up in jail, but this time she's forced to go to a prison boating school.
Oh, wow! A driver's education
I remember this episode.
class.
SpongeBob went to teach. Yep.
I must be having a nightmare.
No sir. Look at the police officer.
Dear Mrs. Puff.
He's trying to keep her. He's trying to make sure she stays. I'm telling you, bruh. There's something we don't know. Like you saw him, like he made sure she couldn't leave. He started holding her.
Yeah.
Dear
I'm
Mrs.
telling you,
Puff,
bruh. There's something
I'm
we don't know.
following in your footsteps and got a job as a driver's ed teacher for the summer.
Who in their right mind would hire SpongeBob to do this after
Exactly.
he's literally destroyed the
He never
city
even
countless
passed.
times while driving? Is this just another one of Mrs. Puff's delusions? Or is the prison intentionally forcing her to be around SpongeBob
I think it's
just
real.
to torture her? I mean, look at the way the guard forces her to sit there and listen to him.
Plus, look at the outfit. Look at the outfit. Remember the delusion episode? She was wearing the orange one, and the real one was the black and white. I think this is like actually happening.
Just to torture her. I mean, look at the way the guard forces her to sit there and listen to him.
You see what I mean?
That boy
And he
strong.
locks her.
And look at that evil smile he has as he watches her endure this torture. There is something very strange going on with this prison. Then, in Season 10,
This is
Episode 8,
nasty.
The Getaway, Mrs. Puff meets a criminal named Dorsal Dan and starts to get romantic feelings for him.
When was this
is
episode?
also while she's still dating Mr. Krabs. Shame on you, Mrs. Puff.
Eat it.
Wow, are you serious? Mr. Krabs getting done dirty, man. You know
I
what?
forgot Mr.
Good for your choice.
End of the episode, they both accidentally land in prison, and the warden puts him in solitary confinement.
Warden?
I
That's
found
the lawyer.
this one pulling up outside the prison.
Ain't that the lawyer in that one episode when Mr. Krabs got sued?
Is he both?
I guess he's both. I swear this is like the lawyer. Remember, like he slipped on water.
Yeah. I know.
Dan, a notorious getaway driver.
That's the
Toss him
lawyer.
the clink.
That boy Plankton want that Krabby Patty so bad.
Right, bro. He'll do
For
anything.
you, my little tender boy.
While you're dating Mr. Krabs,
In or out of jail,
crazy.
this prison will stop at nothing to make sure she is alone and miserable. But why? Who's behind all of this? Why would anyone care this much about torturing Mrs. Puff? Who's the mastermind pulling the strings? Well, maybe it has something to do with her old life in New Kelp City. Maybe she crossed someone and they've been plotting their revenge ever since. But I've looked in every single frame of New Kelp City, and there is nothing connecting it back to the prison. I've looked literally everywhere, and there's not a single person from the city that has anything to do with Mrs. Puff.
This music.
Well, I mean,
Well,
maybe except for the literal warden of the prison she's being kept in. He may be hiding. The literal warden of the prison.
Is that why they're hiding his face? So that they can't
Maybe.
suspect?
yeah, because I did not
You
see
think
that
you
man
think you
at
think
all.
this is a stretch? I don't know. Like, why hide his face? I don't get that part. But yeah, he is wearing the same outfit, and he looks the same. His lips, you know what I'm saying? Like,
It's the same person. No one else wears that.
yeah, it's the same person. Cause you know, like they have the same character in almost every scene.
She's being kept in. He may be hiding slightly off screen, but that is clearly the same warden of the Bikini Bottom prison. And this isn't some random background character that the show reuses
Yeah,
all
it's
the time.
not.
He is a very distinct character. You can call me out on the Squilliam video all you want, but not this time.
They even
Wait
have
a
the same
second.
outfits.
If the warden was originally from New Kelp City, then he'd probably know about Mrs. Puff's dark past and her true identity. So why hasn't he
Yeah.
exposed her? He's just kept quiet about the fact that one of his inmates is living a completely false identity. She'd probably even get more prison time when they find out who she really is, so why hasn't he said anything? This is where things get very interesting. So, we know
Because she
Mrs.
likes
Puff
being in
prematurely
jail.
gave a student at her original boarding school a license, and that led to them causing chaos and destruction. Maybe this student accidentally did something terrible to the warden, and he's blamed Mrs. Puff ever since. Whatever happened was so terrible that it caused him to move to Bikini Bottom and get a job as the warden of the town's prison. And to his surprise, he finds out that one of his inmates is actually the person he blames for that terrible thing happening. This works out perfectly for him. He can finally get his revenge on Mrs. Puff by making her life miserable. All he has to do is reveal her dark secret and she'll be stuck in jail for much longer. Except for one small issue with his plan. Mrs. Puff actually likes being in prison.
Yeah.
One day
Exactly.
down, 2,528 to go.
So instead, exactly. So instead, he makes her her prison on the outside by her teaching SpongeBob.
Yeah.
Cause that's actual prison for her, bro. Like being inside prison is a vacation. Being outside of it, teaching SpongeBob for like every single day for the rest of her life, that's prison.
I am 4 years without SpongeBob. I'm going
Look how happy
to
she is.
enjoy this.
So, he
Not
comes
4
up with a new
years.
plan. Keep Mrs. Puff secret and let her out of prison early, but only under the condition that she has to teach SpongeBob. He's literally turning her normal life into a prison. And he makes sure going back to prison to avoid SpongeBob isn't even an
Oh,
option.
and maybe if she, if she tries to like hurt SpongeBob, instead of like her just violating her parole, they put her on the death sentence. Something like that.
Maybe.
Because she could have easily just taken out SpongeBob if it was like that serious.
Option for her anymore, because he'll make sure that SpongeBob is always in there
I
with
mean, no,
her.
never mind. SpongeBob
And
hard
he-
to kill, but this man's a literal sponge. You
What's
shoot
he
him,
the main character?
The shoot him, like the bullet would just probably just go through him, and he'll just grow back. You can't kill him.
Yeah.
SpongeBob
He's
is
not gonna
unkillable.
let her escape and start a new life like she did in New Kelp City. He makes
Unless
sure
you
got
kick him out of
ran
the
over.
water,
that
that's the only
doesn't
way.
let her leave Bikini Bottom.
I can't even leave town without violating my parole.
He is the mastermind who's been controlling everything this entire time. But guess what? His insidious plan doesn't even end there. This is not the first time we've seen the warden character. We first see him in season 4, episode
Yup,
2,
when
Crabs
he's
Yeah.
versus Plankton.
Yeah, I knew
in this
it.
episode, Plankton slips on some water in the Krusty Krab and
sues Mr.
decides to
Krabs.
sue Mr. Krabs for everything he owns. And then guess who shows up out of nowhere and offers to be Mr. Krabs' lawyer?
What I really need is a good lawyer.
Whoa, did somebody say lawyer?
I knew
Richard
it.
A. Bottom feeder, attorney at law. I couldn't help but notice that despicable display.
Richard A. Bottomfeeder, the warden of the Bikini Bottom prison, is also apparently a lawyer? That's kind of strange. Those both sound like major careers. You usually wouldn't imagine someone being both. Then he says he'll be Mr. Krabs' lawyer completely free of charge.
Unless he's an actor. And like he's acting like as both, just to make Mrs. Puff's life worse. So like anything that needs to be done, like he can act as like a police officer next, and like arrest her, and then like same thing before, like put her in the classroom with SpongeBob teaching to torture her more, or like he can literally act as anything. Like think about it, you can't literally be an attorney and a warden at the same time, bro. That is crazy. No way, I don't believe that. And look at his card.
Lawyer? That's kind of strange. Those
It
both
looks
sound
like he just
major
made this card,
careers.
like,
You usually
just
wouldn't
now at the
imagine
printer.
Someone being both. Then he says he'll be Mr. Krabs' lawyer completely free of charge.
Like, come on now, completely free, because he's not an actual lawyer. It's like a job. I'm telling you, bro. Like, why else would he do it for free? You can't charge him money for a job that you don't actually do. And maybe that's why he slipped in the water, because he couldn't actually go into place as a pretend lawyer, because that's what he is. I'm telling you, bro.
So, how much is this gonna cost me?
Actually, I won't charge a dime unless we win.
Unless we win.
Awfully generous of you, Richard.
Telling you, bro.
He seems very confident that he can win the case, but right before he goes to court, he slips on some water and says
yeah.
SpongeBob will have to be Mr. Krabs' lawyer now.
Oh, this is gonna be a slam dunk.
Oh no! Mr. Krabs' lawyer, speak to me!
Racked with pain, can't move.
Looks like you're gonna have to handle this one, son.
He tells SpongeBob that he has to represent Mr. Krabs, even though he himself called SpongeBob a liability.
Actually, SpongeBob, we won't be needing any testimony from you. Why, you'd be more of a liability than an asset.
But it's okay, because apparently all SpongeBob needs to win is inside of Richard's briefcase.
But then it's locked.
Is in this here case.
He set them up for failure.
Except when SpongeBob gets to court, he realizes that Richard never gave him the combination to the case.
It's, all in here.
Really?
Yep, right in here.
Is there a problem?
Your lawyer didn't give me the combination.
Either Richard A. Bottomfeeder is the worst lawyer in history, or this is all part of his elaborate plan.
It's all part of a plan, exactly.
Here's what I think happened. First, he finds out that Mr. Krabs is being sued, and he wants to ensure that Mr. Krabs loses the case because he wants to destroy any chance Mrs. Puff has at finding love. So he pretends to be a lawyer, even offering his services for free.
So that's how Mrs. Puff ties into all this. Because she was dating Mr. Krabs at the time.
Mr. Krabs can't resist. He makes Mr. Krabs feel confident that they're gonna win the case, and then at the last second, he pretends to get into an accident so he can't represent Mr. Krabs. Instead of finding a real lawyer to replace him, he tells the most incompetent person for the job, SpongeBob, that he has to be Mr. Krabs' lawyer, and he gives him a case that allegedly has all the answers in it without actually giving SpongeBob the combination, setting him up for a total failure in court. Richard A. Bottomfeeder refuses to let anyone get close to Mrs. Puff, not Dorsal Dan, and not Mr. Krabs. This guy has squillion levels of hate for Mrs. Puff.
Nah, that's way more than squillion.
What exactly did her previous student do that warrants this much torture? It can't be something as simple as him or his property getting damaged. It has to be something life-changing. Something like losing a loved one because of the student's reckless driving. And I think the show gives us one last hint about who this might have been. Photos of Mrs. Puff's house are very meaningful to her. She's got photos of Mr. Krabs, her pet snail, and of course those infinitely looping photos that told us so much about her mental state. But there is one more photo in this house that might be the key to this entire conspiracy. In season 12, episode 14, Plankton's old chum, we see a photo of someone we've never seen before on Mrs. Puff's wall. There's some surprising similarities between this character and Richard.
They're both green
color, the red bow tie, the overall fancy, serious appearance. It clearly isn't the same person, but maybe this is someone related to Richard, like a father, a son, or a brother that Mrs. Puff's former student killed.
Bro, stop killing him!
Keeps a photo of him up is to have a permanent reminder to never make the same mistake of giving someone a license who doesn't deserve it. Mrs. Puff is a boating school teacher who once made a terrible mistake that led to the loss of her business, identity, sanity, and any chance at finding happiness. I like to think that there used to be a time when she was happy, back when her husband was still alive. If only he was still around today, maybe she wouldn't have to face all of this on her own. Thank you for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed. Is what I would say if I was done. Except her husband is still alive.
What?
How?
In the SpongeBob movie, SpongeBob and Patrick travel to a gift shop named Shell City that's full of dead fish turned into
saved everyone.
Except they end up setting off the smoke detector, which activates the sprinkler system and brings all the dead fish back to life, including a very familiar-looking pufferfish hanging from the ceiling. Mr. Puff is alive. Well, wait a second. If he's alive and he escaped, then why hasn't he gone back to Mrs. Puff? Why is she still alone? Because remember, she ran away from their home in New Kelp City and started a new identity. So sadly, Mr. Puff has no way of finding her. The tragedy of Mrs. Puff's story is that her happiness is just a city away, but she can never even leave town because that would violate her parole. Richard A. Bottomfeeder probably even knows her husband is alive and is making sure they're never reunited. As the name says, Richard really is a bottom feeder. This video took a ton of time and effort to do all the research for, so I really hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and thanks to NordVPN for sponsoring this theory.
Not NordVPN.
Alex Bale, or use code Alex Bale.
Why it sound like that?
What's going on?
I don't know. Kind of scared.
Hey, Alex, what's going on, Alex? Tell me. Talk to me.
Alex. What is he doing? He getting food? Is he about to eat that?
Is he throwing away perfectly good food?
What?
Sir. Not the steak. Sir.
not the steak.
What is going on? Oh, this is a horror film.
It is. I'm scared. I'm closing my eyes.
Nope. I ain't doing it. I ain't doing it.
Ew.
Not the squish sound effect, yeah. What was that?
In the world? I don't know. Scared the crap out of me though. Who in there?
Nah, bro. You see what Alex got going on, yo? Alex, this is what you into now? Horror films? You just made a SpongeBob film, bro. Like, but all right. Is this how he makes the conspiracy videos? He gets information from that thing, and he gonna end the video. Alex. All right. Well, if y'all enjoyed the video, you guys want the SpongeBob conspiracy number 4, like and subscribe, comment down below. I'll catch y'all next one, man.